Welcome to the Enchantress patch. This is the Shovel Knight event part 2. It's returning with a new skin, some quality of life changes, and of course, most importantly to the competitive scene, a balance pass. This is the last balance update before Final Round 2019, which if you don't know is the first offline major of the season. So pretty big deal, last balance patch before a huge tournament. So let's begin. First up, we got Enchantress herself. Really nice skin. Definitely gonna play her because she's pretty cool and I like Shovel Knight. And yeah, that's it actually. I couldn't think of the third one. The Shovel Knight event is back, so you get some extra gold, you get some little cool icons in the main menu, and you get the store little treasure chest guy. It's pretty cool treasure chest guy. Beyond just the main menu, you have some language updates throughout the whole game. So if you don't know, in the last patch they added languages like Japanese, Chinese, Korean. Almost, please add that. I want that. Italian, Spanish. There's a bunch of languages. Point is, they made some corrections to them. They weren't localized necessarily one-to-one properly, so if you're a player that speaks a language other than English and you notice some errors, hopefully those should be fixed. There's also lots of FPS improvements across every platform, so if you're having some trouble running the game, if you stop because of that, maybe this might end up fixing your problem, we'll see. A nice quality of life change is you can randomize your KO effects, which is pretty cool, you know, if you have a lot. I don't, so this change is useless to me because I don't have any mammoth coins. And finally, if you're a fan of the new test map War Shuttle, it got a bunch of little tweaks and fixes to make it overall a better map. Now you're gonna get to hear from Phazon. He's one of my goons. Let him know what's up with balance.
Unarmed Sarah had its stun reduced by 2 frames, which is actually a pretty big deal because it means Sarah into Endlight won't connect if you hit it with the earlier frames. However, it'll still true combo into Endlight if you hit it with the later frames of the move. Lance D-Light change is very much meant for 2v2 because the increased cooldown on D-Light shouldn't matter in ones and only really affects D-Light black holes, which were actually infinite before. However, they added variable force, so this means that there's a bigger window to escape follow-ups since you'll be out of range of an instant Endlight. This affects Vrax more than anyone, who is able to true combo D-Light into Endlight at any HP with 9 decks. Scythe got a small nerf with very slightly smaller hitbox coverage on Endlight and 3 frames of extra recovery on a ground pound. Both are still incredible moves, and Scythe ground pound is probably the best in the game. However, now there's a more counterplay, which is good in my opinion. Gauntlets got a buff, on the other hand, to Endlight with 3 frames less of recovery and 1 more damage. It'll make punishing it slightly harder, although generally people will be using it pretty close to you, so it's not like it's that unpunishable by any means. The last change is Guns got 2 extra frames of recovery added to a Whiff Nair, which is probably one of the best moves in the game, so it really does make sense as to why this nerf happened. However, the nerf isn't that big, so Guns are still chillin'.
Signature changes this patch were mainly focused on updating some of the older Legends hitboxes and hurtboxes to better match with those that have come out recently. This is really awesome because honestly, it's probably not worth BMG's time and resources to put in with all these old Legends, but they're doing it anyway. It's for the better of the game, so big props to BMG. Thank you guys for that. It's a big deal. So first up, if you saw my video on the Scarlet Hammer Ensig buff, some of that was reverted and the backwards hitting hitbox was removed. The recovery time was increased by 4 frames. So a little bit of a nerf. Does it kill the Sig? Not by any means. It's still incredibly fast. It still covers Hammer's weak angles. And it still does a ton of damage. So it's just a little more risky now. It doesn't have the backwards coverage that it did in the last patch. So I think this is a change in the right direction. Ada was the primary focus for this patch. She received a bunch of hitbox and hurtbox changes on the majority of her SIGs. You can visually see that in the official patch notes video that I'll link below. So I'll just cover the main ones that affect balance specifically. Spear side sig had its force decreased a bit, but the angle of hit was also made more horizontal, which compensates for that. It's still probably her best SIG. It's still amazing. Not a big deal for Ada on this SIG. What is a big deal is the Spear End SIG. So this SIG got tuned way down. Its force was reduced by a whole lot, let me tell ya, okay? And thank God, because that SIG killed so early, especially considering its huge coverage. You know, it's a bless up from me, okay? The next SIG that got a big change was the gun side SIG. Basically, it got its power like tweaked a little around, is the best way I can describe it. So it has more active frames now, it has less recovery frames now, but it also does less damage. So 6 less frames of recovery and 5 less damage. And I see where they're coming from with this change, right? Because the idea is that Ada side SIG has a lot of active frames, and using it is a big risk. So after it's already done, after Ada's done firing, you should be able to act pretty fast. And I think I agree with that philosophy. So basically they tuned down the immediate power of it, made it a little safer, and I think Ada players will actually very much enjoy this change. We'll see if this ends up being a huge buff or not. It's really a question of whether you weigh 5 less damage equally to 6 less frames of recovery. Personally, I think it's a slight buff, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the patch just came out. Can't be too quick to make assumptions. Zol was also buffed, so he had his side axe damage increase from 23 to 27, so that move's pretty scary. But it makes sense, you know, he's a slow, hard-hitting big boy archetype, so it makes sense that his SIG should hit hard, especially since that one's pretty slow. I'm a fan of this change. I think Zol needs a little bit of an upgrade, so right direction in my opinion. Finally, we have Yumiko. She received some, I would call them quality of life changes because they're not game changing by any means. Basically, when she would use side SIG or end SIG on her bow, her hurt box was actually bigger than the hitbox. So it had it shrunk properly to fix that. But honestly, the only reason why this would affect anything was really the priority of it, which didn't matter too much because of how fast it came out and how fast it flew. The only real time you'd see this clash is if someone already was attacking, and so this should just reduce the chance of that happening, but honestly it's not that likely to begin with. So again, a quality of life change for Yumiko. Yumiko's been on the come up. She's received buffs in the past couple patches, so you know, if you're a Yumiko player, you're still probably happy. I can't really see this patch being game changing or anything like that. The changes affected either everyone or only 1 to 2 legends, right? Lord Vrax, I think, suffers the most of anyone because he loses his 9 dex downlight to endlight at any HP, but he can still do it. And like the downlight doesn't send far away until they start clocking into orange, red, that area. So still a lot of damage output from Lord Vrax from that Lance downlight. I still believe that that move should not true combo into neutral light at 9 dex, especially since he can't do it at any other dex. Lord Vrax is the only one that can do that combo, so you know, make of that as you will. And Ada also had the biggest signature adjustments of any character, and a pretty meaty nerf to Spear End SIG. But for top level players, I don't think that should matter too much, because the End SIG is definitely a cheesy move, if that makes sense. Like, don't get me wrong, the risk reward definitely out of whack. You could kill in light yellow off stage, but its utility actually wasn't that universal or that useful compared to something like the Spear side SIG or the Gun side SIG, which also received changes this patch. So not the most solid SIG, but definitely a cheesy one that got its power reduced. I'm a big fan of the change. I think it's definitely the right one to make. But overall, the meta should pretty much remain the same. Ada, I don't think will fall on any tier list. I'm very surprised Fate didn't receive any, like, at least minor nerfs on her orb SIGs. And hopefully, I didn't cut off the first 8 seconds of this video like the last patch notes analysis. And thanks for watching my little video. Shoutouts to Phazon, thanks for reading over that little section. I bet that was really difficult. You can check out a video that I made with him by clicking one of these boxes. I don't know how this works. Just click it. Just like sub to him too, if you want. Please.